So today we're here at my sister's house, and she's had some pressure issues with her pump. So we've done some troubleshooting, and we've tracked it down to a bad bladder tank. So what we're going to do today is we're going to replace this. First thing we've got to do is, it looks like she's got kind of some old corroded fittings here, and you can see we're probably not going to be able to reuse those. So what I'm going to do is here's your water coming in from your well. Here's your pressure switch. This is what controls your bladder tank. So this is what constantly monitors the pressure. You can see back here, these filter the water going into our house. So we have a union here, and we have a hose bar fitting here on this side where the well line comes in. So what we're basically going to do to get this out of here is we're going to take the clamp loose on that hose bar fitting and pull the well line off. And we're going to take this union loose. Then we can lift that whole unit out. And once we get it up above ground level here out of this pit, we can decide which one of these fittings we're going to be able to reuse, what's not usable, and we can install that on the new pressure tank and then set it back down in here and make our union connection and our hose connection. Well, I got the water drained out of the system. You can see my pressure gauge now is reading 0. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to have some water seep out when we take these lines loose, but at least we can kind of minimize that now. So we'll take these two clamps off over here for the well line coming in. One thing I kind of forgot to mention, it's a safety measure you want to take. I've already turned the breaker off for this well pump, so we don't have to worry about the pump kicking on at any point throughout this process. So you definitely want to do that. You definitely want to do that before you get started. Alright, we're going to slide those back out of the way once you get them loosened. And sometimes these old well lines like this are kind of a bear to get off of the barb, so we're going to have to work at that, but usually you got a screwdriver or something, you can kind of pry it in there and work that line off. Oh man. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to try and work to this other side and get this union broke loose. Pretty easy. Man, that was a bear, guys. We got that one broke loose though. Sometimes these unions here are pretty stiff. But we're right over here. Let's see what we're doing. Alright. Got a little bit of water left in there, but it shouldn't be too much. Should drain out fairly quick. Alright, while we're waiting on that, we can go ahead and unwire this pressure switch. So we know we've got the breaker off, but I've also got it unplugged here where we can see it. Alright, and pull these off of there. Careful when you pull them through so that you don't nick up the insulation. Set that back out of our way. We'll just go ahead and take this fitting loose. There, just like this. Alright. So there we've got our well line disconnected. And we've got our union disconnected over here. So now what we've got is we've got a complete unit, fittings and all, of the old bladder tank. It's ready to come out. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift it out of here. And up top on ground level, what we'll be able to do is kind of really assess all of these fittings and see what we need to go get and replace. I'd say most of them. But the goal is, while we're up there and have room to work and nice lighting, we'll get all the new fittings put on so that when we set it back down in this hole, in this pit here, all we have is 2 connections to make. So yep, we'll get it out of here and then we'll meet back up. Alright guys, so we're back. I took the liberty to, this is the old pipe. that we took out, and this was the side feeding the well line. This was the side going to our filter over here. This T goes into the bladder tank. I had to run to Menards to grab new fittings here. I went ahead and dry fit this up in the garage and got these fittings screwed in, got thread tape on them. I don't have them completely tight because I know I'm going to have to adjust these 90s to make them line up with this existing filter. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and put this new T into the new bladder tank. Alright guys, so we got that tightened in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to line up our dry fit fittings here, make sure our T lines up, see if our well fitting's going to line up pretty accurately. Then we'll have to adjust and tighten these 90s so we can get our right elevation going into our filter here. Hold on, I got this figured out. But I'm getting there. Guys, the trick is getting everything lined back up, and now that we got that done, should be smooth sailing from here. Alright, we get our well line hooked back up here. We had 2 clamps holding that thing on. Get those tightened back down. Alright guys, now the last thing you kind of want to do before you turn this on is some of these bladder tanks, and most of them come pre-charged with usually it's around 38 psi. If you're running a 40 to 60 pump cycle, I'm going to check this one with just a tire pressure checker gauge to make sure this has around 38 psi pre-charged into it. It's usually got a little Schrader valve somewhere on the top. We're showing right at 38, so that's good. We can set this to a pump cycle on at 40 psi, and the pump will kick off at 60. Alright guys, now it's time to turn the well on and make sure that our pressure switch is set correctly. So what I'll do is I've got my pressure gauge here. I'll turn this on, the pump will cycle on because we're at 0 psi currently. It should pump up until we hit 60. It should shut off, and barring any leaks or usage inside that we left the faucet on or something, it should hold pretty steady there. We might have a little air in the system since we had it all apart, so we might have to run the faucets for a little bit, and then it ought to kick back on at 40 psi. Alright guys, we've got some drips that we're going to have to address, but it does look like our pressure gauge is climbing. Alright guys, Jake here. It went pretty smooth. This is the first time I've ever replaced a bladder tank. It's at my sister's house. She needed a hand, and I work for a local water department, so I thought it was something I could tackle. If you're ever in the spot where you have some well issues and you think it's a bladder tank and you get an estimate that seems outlandish, this might be something you can tackle on your own if you feel comfortable after watching this video or some other videos. So see what you think, and if you like it, definitely hit the like button and subscribe, and I plan to come out with more videos on just home DIY projects. So maybe like my sister or like me, you can save a little money by tackling some of these projects on your own. All right, have a great day.